Good morning, everybody. It's a little after 10:15, so we can jump right into it. I did get a couple of texts that a couple of people are trying to log in, so we'll keep an eye out for them. I just want to thank you all for joining this virtual roundtable with U.S. Senator Jeanne Shaheen and with leaders from our state's hospitality industry. We have 9 guests. Once everyone logs in with us this morning, each person will take a couple minutes to share what they've been experiencing and their feedback on the COVID relief for restaurants and the tourism industry and businesses. We ask that everybody on the line, if you could remember to mute and unmute yourselves accordingly. That way we don't have a lot of feedback when someone's speaking. And before I turn it over to Senator Shaheen, I'm just going to do just a quick roll call for anyone who might be dialing in, and also to put a business to the faces that we have on the line. So. We'll ask each person to speak with the senator in the order of this roll call. So first off, we have Mike Summers, who's the president and CEO of New Hampshire Lodging and Restaurant Association. Charyl Reardon, who's the president of the White Mountains Attractions Association. Amy Landers will be hopping on, and she's the executive director of the Lakes Region Tourism Association. CJ Haines, who's the executive director of the New Hampshire Brewers Association. Ben VanCamp, who's the vice president for the Chamber Collaborative of Greater Portsmouth. Tom Boucher, who's the owner of Great New Hampshire Restaurants. Jeanne Hall-Johnson, who's the owner of the Sassy Biscuit and Jook, a chicken joint in Dover. And Scott Rutherford, owner of the Little Grill in Littleton and Woodsville. And Luca Paris, who's the owner of Lucas Mediterranean Cafe in Keene. Also on the line, we have a number of media. So we have confirmed for today, WMUR, the Keene Sentinel, the Salmon Press, AP, New Hampshire Public Radio, and Laconia Sun. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Senator Jeanne.
Well, thanks very much, Michelle, and thank you all so much for joining us this morning. Let me also recognize Sarah Holmes, who's my state director, who's on the Zoom this morning, as well as Robert Henson from our DC office. As you all know, Robert and Michelle do a great job in trying to answer questions and get out information about what's happening with small businesses and the economics of New Hampshire and the country. So hopefully between us, we can answer questions that you have. And if we can't, we will get answers. Let me also recognize Sam Paisley, who's on the call, who's working in the communications area. So any reporters who are on, if they have questions, can talk to Sam. So again, thank you all so much. I know this continues to be a very difficult time, and I'm pleased that a week ago, we were able to get through the Senate the American Rescue Plan, which includes significant additional help for the hospitality industry, for live venues, for tourism, which I think New Hampshire will be able to take advantage of, as well as a number of provisions that extend unemployment benefits, that help with the pandemic relief checks that are going out to families. It includes significant help for families with kids in the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit in a way that I hope will be helpful to families who have really been struggling, as well as help for nutrition, for rental assistance, and significant help for our communities, counties and communities. So New Hampshire in this package is, absent all of those other programs, is going to get about $1.5 billion. $600 million of that is going to be directed to communities, and it will go out. These are averages, so please don't quote me if it doesn't turn out to be exactly this amount, but they will go out to communities based on per capita primarily. There's some need included in that formula, but it's mainly going to people based on a per capita. So there are communities who will now have help, and they can use those dollars to help with economic fallout from COVID, to help with revenues, a number of things that I think can be helpful to the small businesses in communities, as well as the inclusion of small business provisions in the bill. The Paycheck Protection Program has additional funding. The Emergency Injury Disaster Loan Program has about $15 billion more dollars. The shuttered venue operators grants, which I don't think anybody on this call is interested in that program, but that has now in total a little over 15 billion in funding. So, and then of course there is the restaurant industry proposal that is included in the bill that has significant funding for restaurants. So I'm hopeful that while I appreciate that it won't cover everybody's needs, it will provide some significant additional help. As you all know, when we passed the Paycheck Protection Program almost a year ago now, nobody realized that this would go on as long as it has. And I appreciate that it has not provided as much of a bridge as we had hoped it would do. So hopefully at this point, there's additional help in this bill that also is more expansive in terms of what it allows businesses to cover. So in the restaurant industry, you're able to cover some of your food supplies. If you need to include different filtration systems in your businesses, it includes coverage for personal protective equipment, a lot of the pieces that were missing in the initial Paycheck Protection Program. So hopefully that will be helpful as well. So at this point, I'm going to stop so I have more of a chance to hear from all of you. Again, thank you all for joining me and for all of your really heroic efforts to keep your businesses operating over the last year and to keep people employed in a way that has made a huge difference in New Hampshire. So thanks.
Great, thank you, Senator. So Mike Summers, if you would mind kicking us off.
Sure, thanks, Michelle. Senator, thank you, always a pleasure. First of all, I want to thank you for how accessible both you and your team have been over the last 12 months. It's certainly been a challenging time, as you know, and the responsiveness of you and your team to answer questions, support us, help us has certainly been very much appreciated. And let's not forget that this latest round of aid has been very specifically targeted at restaurants and will certainly make a huge difference for many of them. You know, the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, there's a lot of good things in there. As I'm sure you can imagine, a lot of folks are still asking us a lot of questions already, but frankly, till we get the details from Treasury and SBA and the details get worked out, devil's in the details, we're still waiting to find out how all of that will work, but hugely optimistic that this is going to be a big benefit for the industry. And a couple of other things you mentioned that I want to just reiterate, but you know, the employee retention tax credit, the ability to extending that through the balance of this year, hugely important, especially for those newer businesses that have struggled to access any other aid. I think that will be a huge help for a lot of them. And then on top of that, you know, again, I think we're starting to see light at the end of the tunnel, but we're certainly not out of the woods yet. And so the extension of the paid time off for employees that need to quarantine, those kinds of things, I think it was extended through September, I think is going to be a huge boom for a lot of businesses to be able to recoup those costs. So, you know, again, you and I have had a number of conversations in the past year. Been a tough year, but I think we are cautiously optimistic that we're getting there. Clearly, the numbers for the vaccine rates, et cetera, in the state of New Hampshire continue to get better by the day. I think that's leading to a level of consumer confidence. And so we're starting to hear the first, you know, ranklings from industry that, hey, business is starting to pick up a little bit. We had a warm stretch last week. People are getting excited for outdoor dining. So, you know, knock on wood, but I think we're turning the corner. And again, your support and effort on this latest aid package and throughout the year, I can't thank you enough. So,
well, thanks very much, Mike, and thank you for bringing up the vaccine distribution. I sort of buried the lead when I was talking about what's in the plan because the first aspects of that plan are to try and increase funding to support vaccine distribution, continued testing and tracing, which we still need to do. And as you say, I had a chance to visit the Exeter vaccination site on Friday and was very impressed with what I saw, talking to Perry Plummer about how they're seeing an increase in the amount of vaccines and they're able to increase the sites where they're giving people their shots is really exciting. And as you point out, as I talk to people who were waiting in the parking lot or who had just gotten their shot. They were all feeling very optimistic. They were excited to be getting vaccinated. They were feeling good about it, thinking that now they'll be able to go out again. And so I think that's the best news we can have, is to get ahead of this coronavirus and put it behind us. So that's one of the big pieces, about $160 billion in this COVID rescue plan for vaccines, for healthcare, to encourage, to cover COBRA for people who may have lost their jobs in the short term. And so a lot of help there for people who need help because of the coronavirus.
That's great. Well, thank you so much. Next, we have Charyl Reardon from White Mountains Attractions.
Good morning, Senator.
Hi, Cheryl. Nice to see you.
Great to see you again. Thank you for all your efforts and your team's efforts on the American Rescue Plan for our industry, and your current work actually addressing the extension of the PPP application deadline. That'll be important for many of our businesses, small businesses for sure. It's been a decent winter. Folks are encouraged by the business here in the White Mountains this past winter. As Mike said, with the warmer weather, not today, but in most days, the warmer weather that's coming around, you can see people are eager to get back outside and enjoying the fresh air. And I think between that and the vaccine, everybody's really encouraged that it's going to be a great summer. And we're hopeful that it will be. Our industry also appreciates your decision to remove the provision for the minimum wage increase from the American Rescue Plan so that it could be properly addressed in its own bill. Although we support an increase to the minimum wage, many have asked that we respectfully request that the bill takes into consideration the small businesses that we have up here, especially in the North Country, but across New Hampshire, and that many of our tourism and hospitality businesses are seasonal and often employ high school students. So that minimum wage really affects them and what they can employ, or how many people they can employ. So, but thank you again, as I have always said, for all your work, your team's work, and always taking that call when we need to call on you.
Thanks very much, Cheryl. And thank you for your admonition about the minimum wage, that as we're thinking about increasing it, we need to do it in a way that can support our small businesses through the transition period. I also wanted to just again point out that there are tourism dollars in this plan that I think will be helpful to us in New Hampshire. 25% of $3 billion that is going to the Economic Development Administration is designated for states and localities that have been particularly hard hit through the tourism industry because of COVID. So that's about $750 million, which hopefully New Hampshire, particularly some of our communities, I don't know if Amy Landers was able to get on, but in the Lakes region, some of the places that have been especially hard hit, hopefully we'll be able to qualify for some of that funding to help them as well. And Cheryl, one of the things I wanted to ask you, I had a conversation with a number of town managers about a week ago. And one of the things that I heard from town manager in Lincoln, which I had heard from Conway and from Colebrook, is that we're seeing a real influx of people who have come to northern New Hampshire, excuse me, during this pandemic, who are staying. Is that something that you're seeing as well, as you're talking to folks about the attractions and what they're seeing?
Yes, we did have quite a few folks come to the White Mountains region this past summer. I think it was most noticeable. A lot of it had to do with the fact that they were using our natural resources more so than they do in the past. And it probably had a lot to do with the limitations on the attractions for capacity, which has been completely understandable. So hopefully some of that will remedy this coming summer, when the attractions are allowed to be open a little bit more, and we can take some of the pressure off of those natural resources that we have and we all love.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, Senator.
Great, thank you so much, Cheryl. Amy Landers, I'm sure if you're up.
Thank you, Michelle. And yes, I apologize. I'm on as
there you are,
Janice,
Amy.
but it is Amy Landers with the Lakes Region Tourism Association. Thank you for inviting me this morning. Just to give you a little recap, yes, we also saw a lot of people that came into the region and stayed for the year, some keeping their children remote, others taking it, actually enrolling them in the local school systems. So we did see a large increase in enrollment in our school systems from people using their second homes or their vacation homes and staying throughout the winter months as well. It has been a good winter with our outdoor recreation has been really strong. Many of the ski areas are sold out, especially on the weekends. Again, sold out at their limited capacities, but that has been a challenge. If you want to ski, you needed to plan well in advance. We did have a lot more vacation home rentals for the winter months. Again, a little bit of a challenge because we don't have the inventory usually in the winter. So it's again, if this continues in the sense that people realize they can stay working remotely even after COVID, we may be able to open up this market and increase our vacation home rental markets for future winter months, bringing in more money into the region. The summer at this point is looking really strong. Both vacation home rentals and lodging bookings, pre-bookings are up over previous years at this time, as well as rentals of boats, canoes, kayaks, attraction tickets. We are encouraging people, if you want to get into the Lakes region this summer, you better start planning now because everything's going to be sold out. So in that perspective is very positive. We still have many businesses that are struggling and it'll be difficult for them to stay open. We're hoping that communities and municipalities will be lenient again this year. And we're hopefully can encourage them that in the sense of the outdoor dining. A lot of people didn't have outside dining in previous years and were able to last year because of COVID. We're hoping that they can have that leniency and let these businesses have their outdoor dining, have their takeout beverages again for this season. It was a win-win for the communities, more people out and about spending money, and a lot of restaurants gained a lot of new experiences in doing dining outside. And I think it's going to be needed for them to survive. As past years, our biggest challenge is employment, and it's going to be the worst ever than we've seen because we don't have the international coming in as well. I'm fearful that we're going to lose several businesses because they won't have employees, that they'll start opening up and end up closing during the season, which we've seen in previous years. So I think that's going to be one of the worst challenges we face. As an organization, we were looking at spending some of our marketing dollars out of state, branding the region, but also about jobs so that we can be promoting out of state to potential employees to come to New Hampshire. But that's also a double-edged sword because if we do attract new employees to come, there's no housing, there's no apartments, there's no rentals, there's no places for them to buy. So even if we put our money and put efforts into trying to get employees to move to the region, there's no place for them to live. So challenges that we've seen in the past, I just think we're going to see them worse this year than we have in the before. Two discussions we've been having kind of on the board of directors level and put it out to our members to start thinking about. One is, are you going to give any incentive for your employees to be vaccinated? So some of our businesses are coming up with cash or vacation day incentives to get them to go ahead and get vaccinated. The other challenge is when you are bringing in a lot of employees at the same time, opening up for the first time or increasing from a handful of employees to 100 employees, how do you guarantee that they're going to be safe? And this came out of recent discussion because we had a smaller business that hired one new employee. That one new employee came in with COVID and that business had to close down for 2 weeks. So how do we manage businesses that are going from 5 employees to 100 employees in a week or two period to make sure that they don't bring someone in with COVID and now they're shut down and lose part of their season? You know, will they require testing before they come in? So there's no good answers to those questions, but it's definitely a realistic, how can we protect these businesses and protect the employees when they're bringing on so many new people at the beginning of the season? So thank you again for having me.
Thanks, Amy. You know, one of the things I am more optimistic about as we look at this summer is that we're going to have a more rational policy with respect to allowing those visa workers that have been so important to the Lakes region and other summer and seasonal attractions to be able to come into the country. We're seeing the Biden administration reevaluating some of the policies that were put in place over the last few years. So I'm hopeful that we're not going to have that same effort to keep out all of those folks who have been so important in the summer to summer attractions. The other question I wanted to ask you was about whether you're seeing a reluctance or businesses are seeing a reluctance among employees to get vaccinated. Is the issue people don't want to get vaccinated, or is it just waiting until there's enough of the vaccine for people to be able to get their turn?
We have not seen a lot of resistance yet. I think it will be hard to tell until people are really starting to bring in their employees. This conversation was from a board meeting back in January. So we have another one coming up on the 24th of March, and we will have that on the agenda just to see how people are making out with their employees doing it. We have not seen a lot of resistance. I think people were worried there was going to be that resistance. So how do we be proactive with that issue to begin with?
Great.
I'll be happy to provide Michele an update after that board meeting to see where they're coming as they're starting to bring on some new employees and if they had some more updates on that issue.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Thank you. And again, what you say speaks to just how important it is to make sure we continue to have the vaccines that we need for people and the testing and contact tracing so we can track down anybody who has COVID and contain the outbreaks.
Yes, because it's very costly if you have to shut down for 2 weeks
Right.
during your prime season. So thank you very much.
It also speaks to the issue you were raising, Mike, about the importance of allowing people to stay home if they think they're ill and be able to be covered for that sick time.
Great. Thank you so much, Amy. So next I'd like to ask CJ Haines from the New Hampshire Brewers to go.
Hello, thank you. Good morning to you both. Hello, Senator. First and foremost, we wanted to thank you for all your efforts with the Craft Beverage Modernization Act. That was a huge win for us at the end of the year. Came down to the wire on that one for all of us.
Very good news.
Very good news. And we were all very thankful for that tax incentive to come through at the end of the year. So that was a good start to the new year for us. Overall, as we kind of move forward, there's been a few breweries. Some of the smaller ones have unfortunately shut down, but we still are seeing progress with breweries opening. There's probably half a dozen that are planning to open this year, which is great to see, especially as smaller businesses coming forth in this time frame is always a challenge. But some of the items that we're concerned about in the coming months we have a bill right now, which is the Fairness for Craft Beverage Producers Act. And this one the intent of this is that when the bill was originally made, there was an oversight for one of the NAICS codes, which this would update those codes so that it would allow more of the breweries to participate and receive additional funds from the PPP. So there were some issues with the 7A loans and 504 loans that they weren't qualifying for because of that code. So the hope is that act will help clear that up for us. And then also, in addition, the Hospitality and Commerce Job Recovery Act. This is one that we've added a specific element to deal with the expiration of unmerchantable goods, which happened between March 13th and September 20th. And basically, we had a fair amount of beer that expired because venues shut down, such as sporting events, restaurants, tasting rooms, and all of that. So this would allow for a one-time tax credit of 90% of that, which would help a lot of the breweries that unfortunately had to shut down, but also had to take a fair amount of beer back during that time period. And then, as Mike had mentioned earlier, is that most of the breweries here do participate in the hospitality industry with restaurants and whatnot. So we're hoping the extension of service for outdoor service will continue, as well as the availability of the employee retention tax credit to be extended through January.
Good. Well, we will track down those two pieces of legislation. Robert, on the change in codes piece on the Fairness for Craft Beverages Producers Act, is that something that has to be done legislatively? It can't be done administratively at SBA? Do we know the answer to that?
It looks like it. It's a bill. It's been introduced in the House. I don't know that there's a Senate version yet, but it does refer to specifically NAICS Code 3121. And it's both with respect to getting that additional 3.5 times payroll for PPP, as well as the reference to the 7A and the principal and interest payments on 7A and 504 loans. So I'm happy to take a look. It's not an issue that I was aware of, but I'm happy to take a look and reach out to the House sponsor.
No, me either.
Legislatively, I think it would have to be done legislatively, because there is a specific reference to NAICS Code 72 in the legislation that would presumably have to be added to NAICS Code 3121.
Okay, so we will follow up with that, CJ, and see what we can find out.
Thank you. The other one we still are facing is that aluminum can shortage is still a big concern for our brewers at this point. There's long delays. So because everything has kind of gone to the to-go model, it's still, there's a number of breweries that have entered into distribution, as well as offering beer packaged to go. And unfortunately, with the delays in the supply chain, it's definitely started to take its toll on some of them. So,
yeah. And I know that the tariffs have been an issue there as well. It's not clear to me what the Biden administration is going to do about those tariffs. We have asked some of those questions and we haven't gotten an answer yet. So hopefully there may be a policy change that will help with that as well.
Well, we appreciate the ask.
I would just add specifically on aluminum, there's another bill that Senator Shaheen was a co-sponsor of in the last Congress related to examining the pricing of aluminum in international markets and making sure that there's no manipulation of the price of aluminum. So hopefully more of it is accessible to end user markets like yourself.
Yeah, I don't think that's been reintroduced yet though.
Not yet, but I anticipate it.
Hopefully, yeah, it will be.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, CJ. Next up, I'd like to ask Ben VanCamp from the Chamber Collaborative of Greater Portsmouth.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you, Senator, for this time, and Michelle for organizing. Whatever we can do to support CJ and her membership is critical. Our craft brewing industry is so important here on the Seacoast as it is around the state. Here in Portsmouth, there is a great sense of optimism in the air. As the days are getting longer and for the most part getting warmer, our restaurants and our breweries and our retail members are really optimistic about what is to come. We're seeing stronger foot traffic around our downtown, and visiting on the weekends is very, very strong right now. The business travel during the week is not going to pick up for quite some time, so there's a gap there. And this Recovery Act really helps fill that gap for a lot of these businesses that are always going to be missing that chunk of business. Right. I'm really excited about the Shuttered Venues Arts Grant, because we have so many arts organizations here in our community that really have been some of the hardest hit this entire past year. So that's a wonderful relief that I think will go a long way to support those. We're seeing a lot of what everyone else is seeing. We're seeing a lot of in-migration of people moving to our area. Housing prices are through the roof. There's no inventory. It will have an impact on things like schools and other things, somewhat in a positive way. It's going to bring young families to New Hampshire, which is great for long term. We're just seeing, a whole host of issues related to that. I think the municipal support that's included in this legislation is going to be critical for many of our communities. and all in all, things are looking good. And we are very positive about where things are going to go. Our retailers are reporting that spending is strong, sales are strong, and I think that has to do with the fact that people still have a little bit of disposable income thanks to some of these stimulus payments and support from the federal government. So people are being healthy, but it's because of this support, and we're deeply excited about that. I'll echo the comments I think you made earlier that as people get vaccinated, they are having more confidence in going out. Both my wife and I are in that boat. We both have been fortunate to be vaccinated so far, and gosh, we got to go out for a drink together the other day. It was the best thing in the world. So we're going to see more and more of that, and I think that's just going to continue to boost confidence in our economy. So thank you for all you do. Your team is phenomenal. They're very responsive and resourceful for our communities, and we're just delighted to see spring coming. And 2 weeks from now, we're going to have outdoor dining again in the city of Portsmouth, and
Wow.
some warmer days ahead. So we're very excited about where we're heading. Thank you.
Good. Thanks very much, Ben. I'm glad to see your dog joining us this morning too.
He always has a great timing for these things.
Good.
Likes
Thank
to be
you.
the star, huh? Thank you so much, Ben. So we have a few restaurants of varying sizes and situations. So first off, I'd like to invite Tom Boucher from Great New Hampshire Restaurant to speak.
Thanks, Michelle. Good morning, Senator. Thanks again
Morning.
for, as everybody's mentioned, you've just been incredibly accessible, and you're a great leader in listening to everybody. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just, the Restaurant Revitalization Fund is enormous. And again, I know we don't know the details, but perhaps, do you have a sense, or someone on your team have a sense on when we'll get those details?
Robert?
So the good news is that the Shuttered Venues Grant program does appear to be moving along. SBA just announced today that they anticipate having that application program or portal open in the first part of April. And what I anticipate is that once they have that sort of infrastructure to administer a grant like this, because it's very new for SBA, they've never really done this kind of thing before, they'll be able to kind of use some of that infrastructure for the Shuttered Venue Grant. And hopefully that the process of opening this Restaurant Revitalization Fund will be much quicker than the Shuttered Venues Grant program was. That said, I don't have a very clear sense of timing. I'm reasonably optimistic that we're talking, a matter of weeks, not months, but I think they're still getting the Shuttered Venues Grant up. Once that's up, I'm hopeful that the process for getting the restaurant fund open and up will be a lot quicker. And so just watch for the Shuttered Venue Grant program to open, and then start the clock ticking down is what I would say.
Great. Okay. So just to give you and everybody on the call a sense of, how we're doing as a company, we're in 9 different communities, Hudson, Derry, Bedford, most recently Concord. So we're a pretty good barometer of we're in the Lakes region. We're a pretty good barometer of what is happening in the New Hampshire economy. And I will tell you that the fourth quarter was dark, bleak. Like I actually was going to go on vacation in December because coming out of the summer, it felt good, and I canceled it. And but since then, our sales have just been ticking up. And as everybody's indicated, with the warmer weather, it certainly has inspired people to just get out of their house to begin with. Right. We have been approved in every one of our communities for the expanded outdoor dining in our parking lots, which was hugely successful last year, as people have indicated. I will tell you that it's obviously been a difficult year, but in the restaurant industry, in order to schedule and to order product, we're always looking at year over year, same week, because that's usually a predictor of what we're going to experience. Well, it's been impossible this past year, and we're actually right back on top of it again. I'll tell you a quick funny story. This past Friday was the year ago where I called my partner Mark and said, "Hey, Mark, something's up. Our sales are down like 20%. I said, "I think it's this COVID thing." And I said, "We need to get an emergency meeting with our leadership team on Monday. What if they close us down?" And he says, close us down. What are you talking about? I mean, and that's the reality that we were living in a year ago. And today marks the day where we were shut down at midnight a year ago today. And so it's difficult for us to look at sales to be predictive of what we're going to schedule in order. We're actually using 2019 numbers right now as a way for us to navigate that. So I'm very optimistic. Everything that I'm hearing from the state level is that we're going to be fully back open, vaccinated by Memorial Day, and we'll be fully back to normal living after Memorial Day weekend. That's everything that I'm hearing at the state level. And then finally, I just want to thank you sincerely for your courage. As I texted you, I know you took a lot of arrows for the position you took on the minimum wage, but it was the right thing to do. And I agree with, I think, was it Cheryl who said this about yeah, that it needs to be addressed. It needs to be a standalone bill. I do agree that we need to have some kind of attention to the teenage wage. The 16, 17, 18-year-olds should not be making what, a 30-year-old should be making at minimum wage. As a company, Great New Hampshire Restaurants is not opposed to an increase in minimum wage. In fact, our policy has been and will continue to be, we've been increasing our hiring wage by 50 cents every year. And we're going to continue that for the next 6 years. And we're going to be at $15 an hour 6 years from now, which is the thoughtful and right way to do it, because it gives us the time to adjust our business model, increase prices, and slowly get to that wage that I think everybody should earn. So I'll leave it at that. So thank you again, Senator. Really, really appreciate it.
Well, thanks, Tom. And as you point out, we need to increase the minimum wage. The question is how we do that and doing it in a way that doesn't lose those businesses that are operating on very small margins that need some adjustment period. And it's not just the hospitality industry or the tourism industry, as Cheryl talked about, that has some of those challenges, but there are other industries that are also affected, and we need to do this the right way so that we can get people that wage that they deserve, so that working families can support themselves on what they're earning. So thank you. And as I actually think that we may see an interest in continuing outdoor dining everywhere. You were talking about all of your communities. It's one of the things that I think people have really enjoyed over the last year, is being able to eat outdoors in lots of places. So I think that may be one thing that doesn't totally go back to the way it was.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, guests loved it last year, and even dining outside at times can be just, you get the sunlight, you get the vitamin D, but then there are those days where it's really hot. So it's actually nice to be under a tent. So right. Yeah, I agree.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And so next we have Shalon Hall-Johnson from the Sassy Biscuit in Juc in Dover. I know she's having some connection issues, so I hope she can stay on for this. So thank you so much, Shalon.
Thank you. And good morning, Senator.
Good morning.
My name is Jeanne Hall-Johnson, and I own 2 restaurants, one in Billings, Montana, and the second in Dover, New Hampshire. We recently opened our second location in Dover in August of 2020 and have struggled quite a bit to stay open through the pandemic, but luckily through community support have been able to keep our doors open. And so right now I feel the struggle. I guess I'm very appreciative of the new bill that was passed and the funds that will be available hopefully soon for new restaurants. But I think the biggest issue now that restaurants are facing are the $15 minimum wage increase.
I think
we lost you. we lost you, Jeanne. When you say the $15 minimum wage increase, that has not happened. There is still discussion about how to move in that direction, but that has not happened yet.
Jeanne, if you can hear me, I think your line got muted on you. There you go.
Okay. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, but it is a big concern among the industry right now.
Right.
And so one thing, or one of my opinions, is that we look at the different programs that are available for people who are who have low income, and see how we can supplement those programs. How we can utilize those programs to supplement this $15 minimum wage increase to help industries that will struggle with such a high increase in the minimum wage. So that's one thing that has definitely been very big topic among the industry. And then also supplies. We are still paying $10 a box for gloves, which makes it just extremely difficult to continue business. I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
That continues to be a challenge, the cost of PPE, because the United States hasn't had an adequate supply chain to provide those materials. And it's one of the areas where I think we are seeing an increase in focus on the Defense Production Act, trying to encourage more American companies to produce what we need, not just in terms of PPE, but also the supply chain issues that we have, because so many of those industries have gone offshore. And I think it's an area that we need to continue to focus on, and to look at a whole variety of manufacturing and supplies and raw materials that we need to be able to produce here in the United States. So I hear you on that. It's something that is not going to happen overnight, but I think there's a real focus on that. And I would just, one of the examples that I talk about is that New Hampshire has one of the few companies in the country that's producing non-latex rubber gloves for the market that we need so much. That's up in Colebrook. It's American Performance Polymers. And they have had a contract with DOD that is allowing them to expand in a way that's going to be really important. But it doesn't make sense that there should only be one company in the United States that's producing those gloves. And the same was true, you may remember, back when we were trying to test people, and there was a real shortage of testing materials because there was only one company in the United States that made the swabs, and that company was in Maine. So we've got to do better in the future. And I think there's a focus to try and look at how we can ensure that we have the supply base that we need in the United States to produce the materials that we're going to need here. So we're not caught off guard in the future if we have another crisis.
Great.
Thank you. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Thanks, Jeanne.
Very good points. Thank you so much, Jeanne. So next and last, but certainly not least, I admire Luca Paris's creativity and how he's able to mobilize the community. So I'd love to have Luca Paris and Lucas Mediterranean Cafe.
Well, Michele, Senator, thank you so much for having me on. I want to echo, first of all, everyone's sentiments about how important your office has been to all of us. Keene especially has felt the love from all of the state, which we always try to say that we're left out in the corner. But this time around, the love was felt in droves. I want to kind of stress the the positive things that have happened over the last year, which is hard to do. I mean, with understanding that this has not been a positive circumstance in any measure. We've all talked about that. But what it has done, it has brought especially our area together stronger as a community and stronger and more receptive to each other's needs, which has started for me with being able to contact Michele, being able to contact your office, how strong our local government has been to doing this with us. And it's pushed us to reevaluate everything we did all the time. We started right away weekly meetings with the local restaurants and the local, our local officials, and especially been a big help is the New Hampshire Lodging and Restaurant Association. Mike, you and Samantha have been there for us every step to answer questions, to tell us what's coming up next. These kind of things we always took for granted. I think that as individuals and as an organizations, we've taken for granted a lot of these things along the way. And that has just worked itself out differently as we've been going, to the point where we're finding different ways to put ourselves out there and do business. Tom mentioned something about, when we got into December, that last quarter looked really scary for a lot of us. And I walked into going into January, February, March, and I know most of you guys thought about the same thing. Unless you're in a ski area, which is still not doing any business, you weren't going to do any business. March is our slowest month of the year. We went into it with the idea that, wow, we're going to lose a couple more restaurants. Numbers were going up at that point. We weren't sure about what was happening with a lot of things. And then a lot of changes happened as we started getting into it, and we have all these great packages now, but we had to take care of ourselves as a community. And we started the Monadnock Restaurant Project, which we are to date are influencing about $80,000 of stimulus into our economy by giving out gift cards and asking people to shop. But that's just one of the things we did as a community. I've seen it happen with so many other communities. Again, the NHLRA with their Rally New Hampshire program has been wonderful. I'm not on here to say anything other than I saw the positive that has come out of what we've been through. And I have a feeling that going forward as our individual community, as our region, and as a state, we're all going to be stronger because of it, because I know we know how to get through these things. And thanks to your help and thanks to people like Mike and the people I watch on here and I listen to what they're doing and seeing what Tom does with his organization, I think we're all in a great place. Is it perfect right now, or do we have hurdles? Yes, but I can't see us not getting through it together. So thank you for everything, and thanks for all you guys do on a daily basis.
Well, thanks very much, Luca, and thanks for that positive, upbeat assessment. And for the really innovative program with the gift cards, I thought that was really impressive to see how the community came together and what you were able to do with those gift cards. One of the things that's happening, I'm sure you're all reading in the news and seeing on television, sort of the end of year compilation of what's happened during this pandemic. And one of the positive aspects of those news reports has been to talk about how communities have come together, how people have supported each other, the positive aspects of this pandemic. And as you say, I hope this is something that we will keep with us after we're through the pandemic, to continue to try and figure out how we can support each other and to support our communities, because that's so important. So thank you for reminding us of that.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions anybody wants to raise? I know we've got about 5 minutes or so, right, Michele? If there's anything else anyone wanted to raise.
Michele, I'll follow up with you on, I know we were able to get CARES Act funding for all the different regions. And with that CARES Act funding, we purchased PPE supplies that we gave out to businesses. So I will follow up with you, see if there's any money coming into the state that we could reapply for that, because I know it saved a lot of our businesses money on buying all of these supplies. So if there's a way to help businesses' bottom line, we can take a look at that program again.
That sounds great. Thank you, Amy.
And I would encourage everyone, as you're looking at guidance that's coming out from the Small Business Administration or from Treasury about any of the programs that we've talked about this morning or any others, if you have questions or if you have concerns, share those with us, because one of the things that we can do is, not necessarily be able to change them, but I think weighing in with different federal agencies about concerns that we're hearing is helpful as they think about how they can be more responsive to what programs are designed to do. So I hope you will share with us, continue to share with us what you're hearing. And if things are not working, please let us know so we can try and make those changes to improve on programs. It's what we did with the PPP program. It's what we've seen with the idle loan program, with the effort to help with shuttered venues. All of those things have changed because we've heard from all of you who say it's not, the way it's written doesn't work for us. So you need to look at these changes, and that's been really helpful in making a difference. So again, thank you all so much for being on the call today, for sharing what you're experiencing and what you're seeing in the industry, and for your continued work to keep people employed and to keep your businesses open. Hopefully, we are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and we will see life coming back to normal with the warm weather and the vaccinations. So I hope everyone stay safe and get vaccinated, and let us know how we can continue to be helpful. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.